Good afternoon, and my name is Michael Rooney. We've had a bit of a false start with the technology here, so we're going to run from the very top. Now, welcome very much to the launch of our resilience white paper on digital resilience. And my name is Michael Rooney. I'm the Chief Executive here at Resilience First. On behalf of our partners, that's Accenture and Cranfield University, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your participation in our discussions after the speakers have spoken. Let me first of all start with some background. I think we all recognize now that systems disruptions are becoming more frequent, they're less predictable, and they're unfolding in more varied ways than we've experienced before. Digital and technical revolutions, together with climate change, geopolitical uncertainties, play major roles in this environment. Resilience First provides a pathway to resilience, and we do this through sharing, collaborating, and co-creating with our network of some 600 businesses worldwide to develop resilience best practice. Today, we have a preview of the Resilience Digital White Paper, and we've gathered together the authors to speak this afternoon. And they will be focusing on the new technologies such as AI, quantum technology, and cloud computing, and how they can affect resilience of organizations. Now, you don't need to take any notes. We just want your comments and participation because we'll be providing you with a summary of the webinar itself, together with a link to the report, and there'll also be a video that we'll send you as well. So over to you now, Heather. Heather Adams, who is the MD for Accenture, that's UK and Ireland, Risk Strategy and Consultancy. So over to you, Heather, and let's have another go at getting this started. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks to all the attendees for your patience. Apologies once again for the technical challenges. Despite that, I am absolutely delighted to have published this paper and to be here today to introduce the topic and chair our panel discussion. At this time, I really would like to encourage everyone to post their comments and questions, and we'll do the best to put those to the speakers later in the session. Today, we'll discuss the subject of digital resilience, challenges and opportunities. We will explore how AI, quantum technology, and cloud computing are expected to bring about fundamental change in digital resilience. And we will consider the challenges and opportunities that those technologies present. Resilience is about having the agility and adaptability needed to preempt and recover from disruption. Resilience is not new. Questions about resilience in the cloud, for example, have been voiced by industry for many years and are now being increasingly focused on by, for example, financial services regulators. However, given the level of disruption that businesses have faced in recent years, resilience has never been more important. New threats to resilience are emerging with the advancement of technology and the interplay between these technologies. For example, the outcomes of societal impact that could result from combining quantum's immense computing power with AI's rapidly evolving self-learning capabilities could be significant and unpredictable. However, more positively, today's advanced technologies also promise enhanced resilience. They can be the basis for developing smarter, more powerful, real-time solutions to the resilience challenges that organizations face in areas like maintaining the security of online communications or the interaction points along their supply chains. For example, cloud service providers offer a wide range of control features to help their business customers better protect their data and assets. Examples include identity and access management capabilities that define who can access cloud resources, and expert guidance for companies on what good looks like in terms of well-architected design, such as creating fault-tolerant processes that eliminate single points of failure. Quantum technology too has huge potential to improve resilience. For example, quantum sensors could detect earthquakes, and quantum has the power to manage the increasing and multi-layered complexities in today's supply chains. Aside from possibilities presented by individual technologies, they can also really move the dial on resilience when used in combination. For example, quantum communications can enable active resilience. Quantum can help strengthen cybersecurity resilience against threat actors, and through quantum key distribution can help provide a more secure way to encrypt and share data compared to current techniques. This quantum-enabled active resilience can then be further enhanced by adding orchestration capability via AI-powered machine learning on the cloud. Technology advancement is not a goal in its own right. Advanced technologies are an enabler to progress, including improvements to resilience, and should be used as such. To balance the resilience promises and perils of advanced technologies, organizations should not just wait and see what happens. They should consider adoption and implementation of AI, quantum technology, and cloud computing as part of their broader business strategy, operating model, and digital advancement, taking a resilience-first approach. I'll now hand over to Professor Weisse Boar, Director of the Smart Living Grand Challenge and Head of Human Machine Intelligence Group at Cranfield University, who will explore the challenges and opportunities presented by AI.
Good afternoon, everyone. Not sure if my camera is working, but I'll press on. Thank you for your patience. I think AI is definitely, as we acknowledge, transforming industries and society. Complex data is being used to personalize at scale using high-dimensional data to solve highly dynamic problems, and often done so in real time. Examples are not limited to classifying complex phenomena in real time with extremely high accuracy, often scanning the horizon, saving a huge amount of human resources over time. These examples include looking across satellite imagery, scanning large network data for latent attacks, as well as identifying fake profiles online. Making complex decisions in highly dynamic situations is extremely popular. This involves prospecting all future rewards and opportunity costs, and they can vary between an AI driving an autonomous vehicle to personalized product recommendations to making strategic organization decisions. The power of AI goes beyond this. New generative capabilities can generate fake profiles and narratives, which can be used both positively to aid or to disrupt processes. And we have seen that with personal assistants and online bots. Increasingly lower entry barriers that democratize the access to machine learning has given access to businesses and operators with traditionally quite a relatively low skill in machine learning. However, what we must be aware of, which is the highlight of the report, is that whilst we can target new issues, especially in resilience, the implementation and insertion of AI into organizational practices has many risks. The first of which is that organizations will be more dependent on highly skilled AI engineers. Retaining, training engineers will always be a challenge, especially in a fast-moving and fluid technological area. The second is a technical challenge of adversarial attacks. AI does open yourselves up to new attack vectors, which can work by themselves or work in tandem with classical cyber attacks. And finally, for long-term sustainability, trust between AI and human stakeholders, including customers and end users, will allow you to pave the way for collaboration and informed legal and policy frameworks to ensure resilience. So this gives you a taster of both the opportunities and challenges of AI, and I now hand over to the next author. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carl Ducatz. I lead the quantum computing program at Accenture, and I'm happy to talk to you about quantum computing and resilience. Quantum technology takes three different forms: computing, communications, and sensing. Alone, each of these technologies offer improvements to various aspects of resilience, including individuals, businesses, and governments. And when combined, even more capabilities unlocked. And then finally, when orchestrated with AI and ML in the cloud, we can vastly increase some aspects of resilience. Let's start with quantum computing. Computing offers a step change in processing power, prevent and adapt phases, quantum simulation of certain scenarios, such as weather forecasting or weather modeling, has been capable of showing improvements by using simulated data sets from quantum computers. Also, machine learning plays a role here, where being able to analyze certain types of cyber attacks can allow you to enable defenses that block and mitigate illegitimate traffic while allowing legitimate users to access your websites and services. Additionally, in the recover, respond, passive phases of resilience, optimization is key. And here we see folks using optimization from quantum computers in order to help enable their supply chain efficiencies, such as the Los Angeles Port Authority using quantum optimization in order to fix some of the backups and delays that were presented by resources overages during some of the recent pandemic conditions. Quantum offers both optimization through a couple of different types of systems, such as annealing, as well as through variational quantum methods that run on different types of machines. These are useful for things like staff scheduling, resource allocation, as well as routing. Quantum computing also presents a risk to modern cryptography, which is a concern that all businesses will have to address in order to ensure resilience in the future. Moving on to the second topic, quantum communications. We see a form of active resilience here. And this is resilience against threat actors, as mentioned earlier, as well as the ability to understand when specific attackers are eavesdropping on communications and protecting those communications from being released. Quantum sensing, the third type of quantum technology, allows us to do both active and passive resilience through early warning systems to understand when natural disasters occur, as well as being able to provide GPS or inertial positioning in GPS denied environments as a solution for some difficulties there. When you combine quantum computing, communications, and sensing, you have the ability to distribute quantum computing and increase the sophistication of the size and capabilities of the system as a whole. This is key for the fidelity of early warning networks as well. AI, cloud, and quantum all come together in various ways. Cloud is the main primary access mechanism in order to use quantum computing today, reducing the cost of accessing the quantum devices and systems. AI combined with quantum computing in order to generate synthetic data sets for neural networks or in order to build more robust models is one of the efficient methods that's becoming available. We see that people need to understand how to need to learn more about quantum computing and understand how to deploy them. And so there's a lot of learning processes and ways to engage it within the ecosystem. It's still early days for quantum. However, we expect to see continued growth and many more use cases in the near future. Now I'll hand it over to Hamish Wynn.
The journey to digital and cloud transformation is clearly not new. And while some organizations are already on the journey, others are really just starting as well. With the speed and scalability provided by the cloud, and importantly, by working with cloud service providers, enterprises can really shift away from operations aimed at keeping the lights on and really rethink fundamentally their overall digital infrastructure strategy. We hope to leave you with a couple of thoughts and takeaways around opportunities in today's discussion and in the paper itself. First, within the paper, we do level set around the different flavors of cloud. The term cloud is used broadly, and it's important to think around public cloud, where either infrastructure or increasingly the platform itself is provided as a service, or software as a service that leverages cloud. And then even within the public cloud, what combinations you might think of for cloud service providers in a multi-cloud context. And then private clouds owned and maintained by the organization, and the combination of the two in a term that's used together, which is hybrid cloud, including both public and private infrastructure strategies. So the first takeaway is really, again, around the type of cloud. Terminology can sometimes be the enemy of progress, but it's it's a key point we like to reinforce in terms of the difference and the relative considerations within a resiliency context. Second, on resiliency, really the connection between cloud and resiliency. Public cloud data center architecture in particular is really world leading in terms of power, cooling, and also built in what's termed clustered pairs often with availability zones, and the principle that customers really deploy to a zone and not in a traditional sense a specific data center. The key here is that operational resilience in the cloud has to be also strategically planned and intentionally implemented. In other words, moving to the cloud may not automatically result in an increased resilience. Governance and control should also be in place to ensure that an organization is managing its resilience risk in a consistent and strategic manner. And importantly, being able to demonstrate with substantive evidence that this is occurring. This is increasingly important from a regulatory perspective and with regulatory scrutiny, where it's not just telling the story, but really showing with evidence how the journey is progressing. And third, this is a point that we share in the paper that we definitely don't hear kind of spoken about in the narrative as much, and that's that testing is still fundamental in the move to a cloud migration. Resiliency testing is a must, even with underlying cloud infrastructure being designed to provide that redundancy. The underlying infrastructure is usually covered by the CSPs, but each business application that is migrated to the cloud is often responsible for redesigning, remediating, and really architecting, really to take advantage both of the benefits of cloud, but the resilient features that the cloud also provides. So in summary, on the cloud section, we really wanted to reinforce that cloud is fundamental to digital resiliency. It can often be a catalyst to really be thinking around your overall digital modernization, and importantly, not just for technology, but as Heather shared at the beginning, that technology is really ingrained and embedded in an organization's business operations. So that modernization journey really sets a business up for kind of future success. So following that introduction, I'd like to hand over to Nigel Sutton from Digital Rail, who's going to close out these introductory sections.
Thanks, Hamish. Hi, thank you. Thanks, Hamish. Thanks all for great insights of the previous presenters to regulatory ethical issues. There may be some of the AI that you're producing may not be have ethical outcomes, or also if there's an applicant is trying to apply for a service or a right to a service and has got a right to repeal under policy, and then the decision is made and rejected, then what evidence is there on that case and the time when that AI is being made, because things have moved on? And additionally, another challenge may be, as there's the risk assessments informing with the residual risks, and as things are moving in real time with the learning, how is the business know what the residual risks are and whether they're in the risk tolerance? So one example of this could be sort of like you're taking pictures of tanks and learning Russian tanks against NATO tanks, but all the NATO tanks may be pictures may be taken in the daylight, and all the Russian tanks may be at night. So it may not be really the difference between tanks of NATO and Russia, much more daylight and nighttime. As an example of what things could go wrong with AI and the integration of AI, and what controls you need to put in there to ensure that the business outcomes are prevalent. But there's a lot more opportunities there around using AI, using and solving complex problems, and removing the human bias factor for risk management as well as another big opportunity, because humans are not that good at risk management. So it takes the impartial view and gives you a rounded view of risk management decisions. Moving on to quantum challenges, I might be wrong and prove wrong, but the capabilities in the short term I see will be for government's espionage and sabotage for the high threat club. Performing tests on each other and all the data they've collected over the time before that and trying to descramble out and work out what's going on. But then in the medium term of things, I think the organized crime, the quantum computers will be affordable to organized crime, and that's when the game changer really starts on the crypto and breaking crypto services. So the challenges we've got around that is, from a business perspective, is really understanding where all your crypto algorithms and keys are, both in hardware and software, and also needing to do a survey of your ICT ecosystem across the business to understand that, to engage with the vendors, with what product roadmaps they've got. Because we could have a potential issue around things that, products may go obsolete because of the quantum cryptography. So you may need to secure budget out of your usual tech refresh cycle to go and get new budget to refresh your technology. To ensure to mitigate the risk against quantum computing and breaking of cryptography. But challenges around quantum, it's not a revolution. It's not an evolution. It's a revolution that we're going to perform in complex computing, and things that we can only dream about today. We will become the norm of the future. So it really just brings on that generation of compute, and then. The last one I like to start off with cloud. I mean, the cloud, there's lots of opportunities with cloud, whatever cloud you're in, public, hybrid, or on-prem, bursting into cloud. But there's a lot of new legislation that's come around, and we all know about the Data Protection Act 2018 and the Network Information Security Directive 2018. But there's also the inadequacies now of the EU-US Privacy Shield. You've also got the EU Cybersecurity Act, which leverages on products and services provided for cyber attack. And you've also got the Digital Operational Resilience Act, which is for financial organizations. But going forward, I'm also aware that HMG are producing research papers, and future thinking of cyber legislation, and this is only going to get tougher as things go along. So when you start selecting and thinking about cloud, you've got to make some decisions. Cloud by default generally isn't secure. You've got to make some business decisions. You've got to make some about your cost-effective, proportionate controls to mitigate the risk down to an acceptable level for the business that you're in. And examples of this is where are the services hosted? Not all services are hosted by clouds in same decisions around cloud, because cloud isn't default by purpose. And then you've also got the governance around the cloud, and you've got lots of the good stuff that the public cloud vendors have done, and the SaaS vendors are built on top of that governance for their services. But as you go up the stack, that SaaS service, it really is a catalog service. You get what you get, so you have to do your assurance and security work and understanding before you procure the service. But cloud, for resilience perspective, as we allows the businesses to go into pay as you cloud, so pay as you go, agile speed of development. When you start using the functional services, you're breaking down simplicity around from web services, but also it allows you to auto scale. You may be on-prem, you might be able to then cloud burst out with, if you're a peaky business, to cloud burst out to public cloud for workloads that are not really sensitive, and then bring back in to also keep your assets sweated at the time. But as you move forward and we do things in infrastructure as code and policy of the code, we're building the infrastructure correctly. This then vastly the resilience across that you can go from one, as Hamish said, from one zone to another zone, and you can your business continuity vastly changes because you may be powering down environments. If you've got a dev environment, I'm only going to power that environment for 9 till 5:30, and then power down overnight. and then 8 o'clock in the morning, I'll power it back up again, and clank, 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 I'll build the whole environment again. So by doing that and moving across zones, it really increases the business continuity. And especially if you've written your code in a manner that's cloud platform friendly, that you can move from multiple cloud to multiple cloud, public cloud, to increase the benefits. And at that stage, thank you for listening, and I'd like to hand over back to Heather.
Fantastic. Thank you to all our speakers for sharing their perspectives and insights. I'd encourage you all to turn your cameras back on at this point in time, and we'll try and maybe we'll just go through in the order in which we spoke before. Weisse, do you have a view on that question?
I have a short view. I think it's definitely allowed certain employers to ask more digital orientated questions to explore new opportunities. I think it's definitely presented new challenges as well that may only be solved by digital, but I'll leave it to the other authors to talk more.
Carl?
I think that aspects of molecular modeling for drug design have spiked and increased our interest in being able to leverage quantum computing as a capability to help with drug research. That's been part of the pandemic. And then also the optimization of supply chain in order to make sure that distribution of medicine or distribution of goods.
I think what's been interesting is, so as we work with our clients, a couple of things that jump to mind. It's important to capture the lessons that you're learning through this current operational disruption, and to enable that to be leveraged, right, to prepare for future operational disruptions. I think people often ask around the difference between risk and resiliency. And resiliency is really assuming that the operational disruption will occur, right? And so leveraging as much as possible the lessons learned through this disruption, I think is a value through it. And then the key thing to remember, we've also seen that it's not just keeping the lights on. It's what was really interesting was the business model is also changing. There were some quite unforeseen impacts that we saw through this current disruption that's important to capture and really learn the lessons from for the next disruption.
Thanks, Hamish. And Nigel, what has it meant for your industry?
Well, I think there's a big change. I mean, without the digitalization, we wouldn't really be survived as well as we have done. If we'd have gone back to the 80s, and yeah, what would we have done all the time? Because we did without the internet and without video conferencing and without all this. And I think we are in a new norm. I don't think we will go back to being in the office 5 days a week. I think we will be as a hybrid working home, going into the office when you need to, but do that. And the work-life balance in the big city centres about those big buildings, because a lot of organizations or business won't need all that real estate anymore. They'll be downsizing. That's over to you, Heather, again.
Thanks. That's really interesting commentary. So I'll now ask Hamish a question and ask a very similar question to some of the others. Hamish, how do you think that businesses can innovate and embrace the move to cloud safely?
Yeah, thank you, Heather. And I think that's it in a nutshell, quite a lot of the almost healthy tension that we see with some of this innovation. It's how do you embrace, right, the velocity, right, how, right, in a safe and sound way is obviously to ensure that you have the right size security and technology controls in place. But actually equally important is that you also have the governance with different voices at the table and with independent voices at the table to ensure you have robustness around that governance. In financial services, we'd call this concept the 3 lines of defense. It's translatable to many industries, but that's the terminology they use within FS. And really what it's getting to is the ability to have independent voices and roles within the room, so that those that are building the controls are, simply put, not checking the controls as well. And so I think if you can get that right, risk and security and safety is always seen as a headwind sometimes to really include that risk mindset from the beginning and to bring that risk perspective along with the journey around these types of innovation.
Thanks, Hamish. And Weisse, I'd like to ask you the same question really from an AI perspective. How can businesses innovate and embrace AI safely? Is it similar, or are there specific considerations with respect to AI?
Yeah, that's a very good and very complex, large-scale question.
Sorry.
No, not at all. I think there's many aspects one needs to consider when it comes to AI, and I will try to answer, I think, Alistair's question at the same time. His current question, which is, will companies or organizations be left behind? I think definitely there is what I see is a mentality issue. There are businesses that are reasonably mending the way they implement and how far they're ahead in AI. I think you will see, pizza shops with more AI technology than some large businesses, right? So this is a mentality issue. But when it comes to the risks, when it comes to safe implementation and resilient implementation, I think it's being aware of the challenges, because you would never really catch up to the rate at which it's revolutionizing and changing. I think having the awareness that you have to be conforming to new regulatory and legal frameworks that's coming into place, both in the European Union, but also in the UK. I think understanding the technical challenges.
So are there any specific considerations around the move to quantum that organizations should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think that quantum, is still in its early days, and so you have to take it in stride. There is a spectrum of different ways to engage in the quantum ecosystem, starting with actual quantum devices, and then moving towards quantum-inspired devices, which have more capability. And so depending on where your business is and what you're trying to learn and what resilience or use cases you're trying to apply to the quantum devices, you'll find yourself navigating a spectrum of different technologies. Luckily, all of these are really accessible through cloud and cloud services, and they're enabled via that mechanism. And so I think
ask whether there are things that he's seen as being particularly successful in his organization or his industry around actually how to help people embrace this change in a safe way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of benefits we've got with the cloud. Yeah, there's a lot of cloud native. The public cloud vendors are putting a lot of cloud native tooling in there and a lot of investment in there. So by default, there's a lot of cyber capabilities that are built in there, and they've got the benefits of the auto patching and things like that in there, which on legacy on-prem could be challenges for business. But like I say, the native tooling is really key, and that's the key message. That it's not so much buying lots and lots of different things, because the cloud vendors are pumping capabilities in there for cyber.
And are in constant change and updating their services. I guess the slightly obvious answer is no. But certainly I know we've talked a bit about, for example, the opportunity that quantum provides in terms of better managing supply chain. Carl, do you want to offer a few words on that?
Yeah, I think so. Supply chain, if you break it down, is fundamentally ends up being a traveling salesman type problem, which we know is a problem that is impossible to solve exactly at scale with our classical computers. So we use technology, we use something called a heuristic that gives us the best answer that we can get to, but not necessarily the exact or perfect answer to the problem, but it is functional. We're operating supply chains at scale around the globe, and we're very in packing of trucks or in any aspect of the supply chain. And so it is a very interesting technology to explore, and the potential of it, is very transformational for everyone involved. And so I think that is why there's so much potency and so much interest behind this particular topic.
Great, thank you. So I appreciate we started late, so we'll run over a little, but I don't want to run over too long. Maybe just turn to each one of the speakers in turn and just kind of ask you one final thing. So if you want our listeners to take away one thing that they should go and explore and get curious about in thinking towards the future following this session, what would you ask our listeners to go and explore and get curious?
Machines. But in the end, a lot of the horizon scanning and large-scale surveillance will be done by machines rather than human beings. So understanding adversarial vulnerabilities is super important. Thank you.
Thanks. Carl, what would yours be?
I would say if you haven't already, then start engaging in the quantum ecosystem and start using some of the technology. Learn about not just computing, but sensing and communications, and definitely get your cyber teams considering the risks that they'll be impacted by. It is estimated that if you don't start now getting resilient to quantum computing attacks of the future, that you won't be able to do it in time.
Thanks, Carl. Hamish?
I think the key takeaway I would have is in the new technologies, it's sometimes this realm just of technology, but actually this is a central conversation to everybody, and everybody's a stakeholder. So I would have immediately have a look at your cloud governance and make sure you've got all those voices independently coming together. Thank you.
Thanks. Nigel?
I'd like to just go back to Carl's comment about the quantum, getting ready for it. That is the train that's coming down the track, and you've got to really, the businesses have really got to understand where all that is, that cryptography is. You've got to do surveys, you've got to understand about the vendors, where they are. So as business leaders,
So much, and thank you to all our speakers for those fascinating insights into the world of digital resilience. I hope that people have found this interesting and will go on to read the paper. I think, you know, in summary, these advanced technologies are ever evolving. The train is coming. I love that analogy. And the important thing is to start getting engaged and start planning it into your strategy as to how you're going to leverage these, or at least respond to these in your organizations through your strategy, your operating model, and your plan for your digital advancement.